This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, "This is a good one." Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. What's crazy about all of this is just that...
This is a good one. That's what Jeffrey Epstein allegedly told Donald Trump while presenting him with a young girl at Mar-a-Lago, according to FBI investigator notes now in the Congressional record. Not a rumor, not speculation. FBI investigator notes, documented, entered into the official record of a House Oversight Committee hearing. And sitting at that witness table, responsible for investigating those very files, was Attorney General Pam Bondi, who refused to answer questions about them. Instead, she read a list of crimes committed by undocumented immigrants in Texas. Welcome to what just happened in Congress, where a sitting attorney general was confronted with 38,000 references to the president in Epstein files and chose to talk about anything else. Let's break down exactly what Jasmine Crockett just did and why Bondi's response has everyone talking. The hearing started normal enough. Representatives took turns questioning Attorney General Pam Bondi about various Department of Justice issues, standard oversight, prepared answers, talking points about crime and justice. Then Jasmine Crockett got her time, and she immediately announced she wasn't playing that game. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And to be clear, I'm not going to ask any questions of this witness, because this witness has revealed that she has no intentions of answering questions. That opening line changed everything. Crockett wasn't even going to try the traditional question and answer format. She was calling out what she believed was deliberate evasion before even starting. But instead of complaining, she did something brilliant. She turned to Representative Becca Balint and asked 3 simple questions. Right or wrong? Raping children? Wrong. Right or wrong? Killing random citizens? Definitely wrong. Right or wrong? Enriching yourself as sitting president? Definitely wrong. The room got quiet. Crockett was establishing basic moral clarity. Simple yes or no answers. Then back to Bondi. Okay, thank you. Because I probably never would have got that with our witness. Clear accusation. The Attorney General won't give simple answers to simple moral questions. But Crockett wasn't done setting the stage. She acknowledged the sexual assault survivors who were sitting in the hearing room, women who had been ignored all day. Let me address the survivors because that's exactly who they are. They are not victims. They are survivors. Let me say thank you for having more courage and moral clarity in your pinky fingers than the entire Department of Justice. The contrast was deliberate. Survivors sitting in that room with more moral clarity than the entire DOJ. That's not subtle criticism. That's a direct attack on institutional integrity. Then Crockett did something unexpected. She praised Republican Congressman Thomas Massie. That's why I applaud Thomas Massie, because he's the only person on the Republican side that has a backbone and knows how to stand up to corruption. In a partisan hearing, a Democrat praising a Republican for standing up to corruption sends a message: this isn't about party, this is about right and wrong. And when you acknowledge someone across the aisle, it makes your criticism of your own side's administration official more credible. Now Crockett was ready to go after Bondi directly, and she started with Bondi's own written testimony. In the written testimony of this witness, she stated that when she took office, she had 2 main goals. The first was to end the weaponization of justice, and second, to return the department to its core mission. Pause for effect. Not only have you lied about both, you've intentionally done the exact opposite. That's not questioning. That's not oversight. That's accusation. Direct, unambiguous accusation of lying under oath. And then Crockett laid out her case. You're spending more taxpayer resources arresting journalists than you are prosecuting pedophiles and creeps. The framing was devastating. Not just criticism, but a priorities argument. And priorities reveal values. She got specific. At your direction, DOJ has arrested Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And I might add that y'all actually had a judge that rejected y'all for trying to arrest Don Lemon before. Just like the grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Kelly. Just like a grand jury rejected y'all as it relates to Senator Slotkin. Just like the case against Tish James was dismissed, and the case against Mr. Comey was dismissed. Judges rejecting arrests. Grand juries rejecting charges. Cases dismissed. A pattern of DOJ actions being rejected by the judicial system. And then Crockett delivered the line that would go viral. I completely don't get how it is that you're sitting at the top of DOJ, because you don't seem to be good at your job. Not subtle. Not diplomatic. Direct assessment, you're not good at your job. From a member of Congress to a sitting attorney general on national television. But all of that was set up, because Crockett had been building to one specific topic that would make everything else look small by comparison. Jeffrey Epstein.
let's circle back to you protecting pedophiles and creeps because I want to talk about the president and his possible involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. The room shifted. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. Crockett was careful with her framing. Now, I don't know what the president might have done with Jeffrey Epstein, but unlike this administration, I believe that facts matter. So let's talk about the facts. Notice the structure. She's not making claims about what happened. She's presenting documented facts and letting them speak for themselves. Fact number 1. Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contain more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. 38,000 references across 5,000 files. That's not occasional contact. That's documented, extensive connection. Fact number 2. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. Crockett wasn't speculating. She was reading from the files, and she got specific. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Ghislaine Maxwell, the convicted sex trafficker, presenting a young girl to Trump, and Trump flirting with her for more than 20 minutes, according to files now in the Congressional record. But Crockett had more. She held up another document. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, "This is a good one." FBI investigator notes, not anonymous sources, not rumors. FBI documentation describing Epstein bringing a victim to Mar-a-Lago and telling Trump, "This is a good one." The implications are staggering. If true, these notes suggest Epstein was trafficking victims to the president's property, and the president was aware of what was happening. Crockett was very careful about what she did and didn't claim. Now, I'm not saying that the president is a pedophile, but there is a lot of evidence in these files that suggests that he's very close friends with a lot of men who are pedophiles. That distinction matters legally. She's not accusing the president of criminal acts. She's documenting his associations with convicted and accused sex offenders, based on files in the Congressional record. And she's asking why the Attorney General isn't aggressively investigating those associations. What's crazy about all of this is just that this is a big cover-up, and this administration is engaged in it. In fact, this administration is complicit. There it is. Not just failure to investigate, active cover-up, active complicity. That's the accusation Crockett was building to from the beginning. And she wasn't done. She rattled off additional allegations. DOJ obstructing investigation of agents who murdered citizens, seizing Fulton County voter data to steal 2026 midterms, having Tom Homan on tape accepting a bribe and killing the investigation, preparing a $230 million presidential payday violating the Constitution. Each could be its own hearing. Crockett listed them to establish pattern. DOJ protecting the president and allies while targeting enemies. Then she delivered her conclusion. The fact of the matter is that you will be remembered as one of the worst attorney generals in history, an attorney general who has prioritized obstruction over justice, corruption over the law, fealty to the president over loyalty to the Constitution. That's not criticism. That's epitaph. Crockett was writing Bondi's historical legacy in real time on national television. And Mr. Chairman, I will yield. Crockett sat down. She had used her entire time not to ask questions, but to build a prosecutorial case. And now everyone in that room and everyone watching was waiting to see how Bondi would respond. The chairman recognized the next member, and that member offered Bondi a chance to respond. Did you have anything you wanted to say before we talk? This was Bondi's moment. She'd just been accused of covering up presidential involvement in sex trafficking, of being bad at her job, of violating the Constitution, of being one of the worst attorneys general in history. How did she respond? I find it interesting that she didn't even want to try Congresswoman Crockett to ask any questions, because she certainly did not condemn her leader Hakeem Jeffries for taking money from Jeffrey Epstein after Epstein was convicted. Her first response wasn't to address the allegations. It was whataboutism about Hakeem Jeffries taking money from Epstein. Then she got to what she really wanted to talk about. This is what she didn't want to talk about. Texas from Cuba. Convicted homicide, arson, weapon offense. Convicted. So what we talking about? Convict some of these perpetrators. She began reading a list. Crimes committed by undocumented immigrants. Texas, convicted of homicide. Seal Joseph from Dominican Republic, Texas, convicted for kidnapping, rape. Khalid Khan from Afghanistan. That's why they want to talk about Epstein and not what's happening in their own states. Crockett presented 38,000 references to Trump in Epstein files. FBI notes about victims at Mar-a-Lago. Ghislaine Maxwell presenting young girls. Bondi responded by reading a list of immigrant crimes. There it is. Bondi's framing. Democrats want to talk about Epstein to avoid immigrant crime, but Crockett didn't bring up Epstein randomly. She presented FBI notes, documented evidence of presidential associations with convicted sex traffickers. Bondi's response: change the subject to immigration. The connection between these topics?
There isn't one. Unless the strategy is talk about something else, anything else. That's what makes this politically explosive. When you're the Attorney General and Congress presents documented evidence about presidential associations with sex traffickers, and you respond by discussing immigration crime, it looks like cover-up. Maybe Bondi has legal reasons she can't discuss ongoing matters. But she didn't say that. She didn't explain. She didn't promise to investigate. She didn't dispute the 38,000 references or FBI notes. She changed the subject. And when the Attorney General appears to dodge Epstein questions by pivoting to immigration, it creates exactly the appearance Crockett was establishing. This DOJ protects the president, doesn't investigate him. Whether that's true or not, that's the image from this hearing. And images matter as much as facts. The question now is what happens next. Crockett entered documents into congressional record, FBI notes, file references, Mar-a-Lago allegations. Those don't disappear. They can be investigated further, used as basis for subpoenas. And if Bondi continues avoiding specifics while Crockett presents documentation, political pressure builds. Because I'm not going to talk about Epstein, I'll talk about immigration stops working as a response. This hearing raises questions about institutional trust. When Congress presents documented evidence about serious allegations and the Attorney General changes the subject, what does that tell the public about DOJ independence? Crockett said Bondi would be remembered as one of the worst attorneys general in history. That's harsh. But if the lasting image is refusing to address Epstein files while pivoting to immigration, history might agree. The survivors in that room deserved better. The American public deserves better. And the questions Crockett raised, 38,000 references, FBI notes about Mar-a-Lago, Ghislaine Maxwell presenting girls deserve answers, not deflection. Whether those answers come remains to be seen. Subscribe because the Epstein files aren't going away, and neither is congressional pressure. Share this because an Attorney General just responded to FBI documentation about presidential Epstein connections by reading immigrant crime statistics. Thanks for watching.